In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this firefighter themed cake. And I'm starting with my cake already iced and it's covered in fondant and it's in the refrigerator waiting to be decorated. I have tons of videos showing you how I do that process that will be linked below. And I will also let you know how much I charged for this cake. So let's get started. In case you haven't heard, I have Tylose powder mixed into all of my fondant. I only use marshmallow fondant. Store-bought fondant is way too soft. It's prone to cracking and elephant skin, and it makes your life a nightmare. So I make my own marshmallow fondant, sprinkle some of this in there, roll it out, let it sit. It's going to make your life so much easier. And side note, I took my nails off. I'm letting them grow out. They look atrocious. I know they do. And my thumb, I slammed it in my car door, so that's why my thumb looks like that. So just try to ignore my nails. That green is a mixture of electric green and lemon yellow. I have my ribbon cutter and I'm cutting 2 of that bright yellow strips and 1 strip of that gray fondant. I'm straightening it with my rulers. And I want to paint the gray silver, so I have some Rollcom Super Silver, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of lemon extract in this cup that I have, and I will link that in the description. And I need 2 coats of this. This lemon extract evaporates really quickly, so I paint on a coat, and then I let it dry for about 2 minutes, and then paint the other coat to really deepen it to a beautiful silver color, and I'm going to set that aside. Now, I hope this isn't confusing. I'm making the collar. I'm cutting a really long, about 3-inch tall rectangle, flip it over, get a little bit of water on the back, and I'm going to put a ruler down there and fold it in half. That way it keeps its shape. And this is going to help the collar stand up on its own if you fold a piece of fondant in half. It just makes it a little sturdier. That way it can stand on its own, basically. So I'm just going to set that aside, but can you see how it's not falling over? And then I'm taking my ribbon cutter and cutting another ribbon and using my stitching wheel in between 2 rulers. I put the fondant. That way it doesn't get distorted when I add the stitching. And I'm making this jacket. So I just kind of looked at a firefighter jacket and am eyeballing this. I cut the ends of the collar on an angle, that way it looks more like a collar, and I'm just kind of putting everything on the cake first. I forgot to add some stitching to that collar, so that's what I did there. And I'm putting them down on the cake first before I get any water or anything underneath it. And then I have a wider rectangle that I put stitching around the edges. And again, I looked at a picture of a jacket and I'm just trying to make it look like that. I'm giving the collar a little bit of motion so it looks a little worn and lived in. I'm getting a little bit of water underneath it and I am trimming off the excess and pressing that into place. And I got some water behind this piece and I'm just trying to cover the top half of that thinner ribbon with the thicker rectangle, and then I'm getting a little bit of water underneath that collar where it's touching the cake and just trying to get everything in position. And she wanted this to look a little worn and dirty, so I am dusting some cornstarch on here. I do it a few times because the fondant, it keeps getting absorbed into the fondant, but just taking a brush, dipping it in cornstarch and dusting it on here to give it a more lived in, not so black look. This was per request by the customer. Now I have some Crisco and I'm getting some shortening along the top edge. I'm using shortening for the top ribbon because I can move the ribbon and get it into place because shortening is very forgiving. So I'm starting in the very back and I am wrapping this around the very top of the cake. Where it meets in the back, I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and cut it and press the seam together. Now I'm going to use my palette knife and I got eye level with the cake and I'm pushing this line up or down, just trying to make it perfectly even and level with the top of the cake. That's why I like to use shortening underneath pieces of fondant that I'm trying to move or manipulate and put into the correct position. The shortening doesn't adhere. It's not very sticky, so you can kind of slide the fondant around until you get it into the right position. And now I'm going to use water. Water is not very forgiving when you're sticking fondant on cakes. So I'm using water underneath this silver strip. And again, I'm trying to make sure that it meets that lime green yellow piece above it using my palette knife to make sure that it is nice and even. And I don't want a gap in between both of these. And then again, I'm getting a little bit more water down and I'm going to put that other bright yellow greenish stripe down and cut the seam in the back, press it together and use my palette knife just to make sure everything is even. And I just want to measure the space here. It's about 3 inches that I have to print out that name. I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. I have a piece of non-slip pad underneath my cutting board so it doesn't slide around, an X-Acto knife with a wet paper towel, and a Dresden tool. And I printed that out the correct size. I rolled that fondant out about 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'm using my trace cut and smooth method to make this name. I'm just using my Dresden tool to lightly trace this on here to transfer that line onto the fondant. Don't forget the center of the letters as well. And then once that's complete, I peel it back and voila, you can see the letters. And you always want to cut the center pieces of the letters or numbers first and smooth them out before you cut the rest of it out. And then I'm just carefully taking my X-Acto knife and cutting out all of these letters. And anytime you cut anything out of fondant, it's going to be jagged. You need to take your fingers and your tools and just smooth the cuts. And once they're all cut out, I'm going to realign them on top of the picture so they dry to the correct shape and set that aside at room temperature while I continue. Now I'm going to make the flag. I have my ribbon cutter and I rolled out this white fondant and the black and the red all equal thickness. So I'm doing about 5 lines of the white. I'm doing 1 line of the red, and this was sticking and it was so annoying as I was trying to cut it. So I cleaned that off before I continued with the black. And with the black, I think I did 6 or 7 stripes. So I just looked at a picture of a firefighter flag and cut as many stripes as I needed. And I'm straightening all of these with my ruler. And then I'm rolling this piece of black fondant out. This is going to be the backing for the flag. So it needs to be a little bigger than the flag that you're going to put on the cake. I carefully move those stripes out of the way. And I'm getting some water down on this entire thing, and I'm going to lay the stripes down on top. So I'm starting at the very bottom with the black piece, and I'm using my ruler to make sure that it is perfectly straight. And then I'm going to take a white piece and I'm making sure that it is exactly against that black one underneath, then use my ruler and make it straight. And then again, I'm going to do black and straighten that out, and then white and straighten that out. So you can see the pattern here. And I make this bigger than I'm going to need it because I'm going to cut it down to size. It's just easier to make it this way. And then after that third black one, then I do a red stripe and make sure I straighten that out. Now I have an L square and another piece of black fondant. I want to cut a perfect 90-degree angle. This is where the stars are going to go, but again, I'm cutting it a little bigger than I need it to. You don't want it in the center of the flag. The part that has the stars is a little bit off to the left. So I'm putting that down, making sure no air bubbles form behind it. And then I'm cutting a straight edge on these pieces and continuing. Again, I was looking at a picture. So it was a black stripe on top of the red. Make sure it's even. I had to get down a little bit more water because it was starting to evaporate. And then I'm alternating white and black until I get to the very top. And I just cut off that excess that was sticking off over the edge. Now I have a little star plunger cutter. This is a pain in the butt. You got to cut out 50 stars. So I did that and set those aside. And now I have a little bit of water, and you have to make sure you place these on here correctly. So I'm leaving enough space in between that's about a star's width. So there's 6 on the bottom row. And then I place these other ones along the side to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. But there's 6 on the bottom row, there's 5 above it, and then there's 6 on the next row. So I'm just making sure I align those stars just like the picture. So you do need a little precision here. Now I'm using my L square. I'm aligning the very bottom with that bottom black stripe. And then I'm kind of sawing my knife through there so I don't drag those lines. And then once I have that cut out, then I'm going to just do one more final slice. This way I'm not going to distort the flag or mess it up. So again, I align the left side with the cut I just made and align that top part with the top part of the flag, and I'm cutting through the fondant, and then I'm going to turn it and align the top part with the part I just cut and align the right side that I want to cut down the width of the flag. And again, I sawed it so I didn't drag the lines basically. So here is the flag cut to shape, and look how cool this is. Because it's on that fondant backing, you can lift it up and move it around. So I got my cake out of the refrigerator. Putting it on here is a little challenging. You have to get it in the right shape. I want to give it some motion, so I want it like waving. I don't want it flat on there. So I just tried to find the correct position, and then once I got it in there, I'm getting a little bit of icing behind here. You don't want too much because you don't want it showing underneath the cake. And then I decided to use piping gel under this corner here. So wherever it's touching the cake, I'm just trying to adhere it. See, again, I'm using a little bit more icing. You're not going to be able to see it because it's all the way underneath the flag, and then a little bit more piping gel here. So do you see how I have it kind of in a wave shape?
I want to put the flag on the cake right after I make the flag so it doesn't dry out and crack when I put it on there. So you need to do it immediately after you make the flag. And I'm taking a dry paintbrush, just removing the excess cornstarch on the flag, and then I want to put the lettering down. So luckily the name wasn't too long, and she wanted to be able to view the name from the front. That usually goes on the back of the jacket, but I'm starting with the last letter and then just building it over to the left. Got a little bit of water behind it and stuck those down. And now I just want to add a little bit more cornstarch because it keeps getting absorbed into the fondant and then it doesn't look as dirty and not clean as she wanted it to. So I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator, and now I'm making this little pocket. So there was no rhyme or reason to this. I just freehanded this. I cut a rectangle, and then I'm cutting a ribbon that's slightly thinner than that first ribbon, and then another ribbon that's even thinner than that second ribbon that I did. And then I'm taking my stitching wheel and I'm stitching on either side of these ribbons. And I'm cutting these to size. So I'm putting that wider one on the top and I'm just cutting the end off. And then I'm going to put the thinner one on the bottom and cut the end off. So you can kind of see what I'm making here. It's like a little pocket to hold something. I don't know. I saw one on a jacket and I just decided to make it out of fondant. And then I'm adding more stitching. I'm doing a line like a third of the way down. That way it kind of looks like there's a piece of Velcro behind it, if you will. So this will look better when I put it on the cake. So I'm getting a little bit of water behind it, and this is going to be like on the left side and sticking that down, making sure that it is nice and straight. Then I'm getting some water behind these other pieces. So that top piece, I let it hang over the very top of that bottom rectangle a little bit, and I'm just pressing that down. And then again, getting a little bit more water behind that other piece and sticking that down. Now I want to make the flames. So I printed these out in 3 different sizes. I will link that in the comments. Rolled out this fondant in all these colors, pretty thin. And again, I'm doing that same method that I used to trace the letters for these flames. So I'm tracing the white part in all 3 sizes on the white. And then I'm going to do the yellow part in all 3 sizes. So you see I have to go on, I'm just doing the yellow section here, and where it's at the bottom, I just continue where the white part is. And then I'm doing the same thing for the orange. So I'm just tracing the orange one, and I will do the same thing for the red. So I traced each one of these in all the colors in all 3 sizes on all of these pieces of fondant. And then I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and cut out all of these pieces. Now I want to airbrush these. Do you see how the tip of the white is yellow, the tip of the yellow is orange, the tip of the orange is red? So I have some red, orange, and yellow airbrush coloring. You can only use airbrush coloring in an airbrush gun. I'm getting a little yellow in there, and I'm just spraying the tips of these. So I flipped it so the tips were facing me, and I'm doing it on a paper towel so I don't get this everywhere. So I'm spraying the tips of the white, yellow, and then I cleaned out my gun, and then I got some orange in there, and I'm spraying the tips of the yellow, orange. Now, if you don't have an airbrush gun, you can use petal dusts and just dust the tips of this, or you don't even have to do it at all. And then I'm spraying the tips of the orange ones red. You have to let them dry first, and then I'm going to get a little bit of water on the back and put these together so it looks like the picture. So I'm putting the orange on top of that deep maroon, and then I'm putting the yellow on top of the orange and the white on top of the yellow. And these flames look really cool. They're just like a little abstract way of adding some fire to your cake. There's tons of ways to add flames to your cake. I'm going to set those aside. Now I'm going to get my cake out of the refrigerator, and I did take my palette knife and I pulled the tips away just to give those flames a little bit of motion. I'm going to get some icing on the back, not too much because you don't want it seeping out the side. You don't want to see white icing behind those flames. So I just put it in the middle where it's touching the cake, and I did the bigger one on the left, the medium one on the right, and then I'm doing the smallest one in the middle. So just getting a little icing down and sticking that in the middle, and here is the cake. How cool is this?
So there you go. How cool is this cake? I just love this design. Now, this was based off another cake that I did for a guy who became a police officer, and I did this one, and she wanted a very similar one except for a firefighter theme. And just a quick note, I believe I mentioned it in the video, but when I make that flag, I put it on the cake right after I make it. That way it doesn't have time to dry out. If you make it in advance and then try to put it on the cake, it can crack. And I know this because it happened to me and I was so annoyed and I had to make the flag all over again and it was a nightmare. But this way the fondant is still soft and pliable and you can bend it and wave it and get it on the cake without the fondant cracking. Now you can make it in advance if you want to seal it in a Ziploc bag, but you're gonna have to find a bag that's big enough that you can seal it in and still hope that it doesn't dry out so that it'll crack when you put it on the cake. So I just feel like making this flag, it's easier to make it and put it on the cake right away. That way you won't have issues when you're trying to move it and get it in the right position. Now this cake on the inside is a 2-layer torted 9-inch, and I have a video where I talk about when I tort and when I don't tort my cakes, and I will link that in the description. It feeds 24 to 28 people, and how much did I charge? This one was $375. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave it in the comments below. And just a reminder, I have ebooks with all of my favorite recipes. I have my signature scratch pound cake recipes, my best doctored cake mix recipes, all of my favorite icing and filling recipes, along with my favorite numbers and my favorite fonts. So they will all be linked below. And I do have a Cake Academy membership program where I can help you elevate your cakes to the next level. All of that information is in the description. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is down below. And I would love it if you would keep in touch on socials, and you could check out my website. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.